Remember, this show is PG-13, so you might hear a naughty word or two. Trigger warning here that we will discuss sexual assault, but without the details of anything that was done in this episode. Today we're talking to Emma Webb, the author of Historic and one of the former gymnasts at the famed Olga Gymnastics and Trampoline Club in Dorset, which is in England. Emma Webb is a pseudonym so she can remain anonymous for her safety. Olga was founded in the 1970s by former Olympic diver Brian Phelps and his wife, Monica Phelps, who both became very influential coaches in British gymnastics. And you will recognize Monica Phelps' name for our important episode called Commentator Hall of Shame. That's the same Monica Phelps who said the most horrific things about athletes on television. So I'll link that episode in the show notes. Behind the Phelpses' public success, Brian Phelps carried a long, concealed criminal history, long before Emma even met him, in fact. And then finally, in 2008, he was charged with rape, attempted rape, and 15 indecent assaults between the years of 1975 and 1986, when the victims were between 6 and 15 years old. Brian Phelps went to prison after admitting dozens of sexual offenses against children who trained at Olga. When we talk about his admissions and recordings, we're talking about those police interviews. Brian served 6 years in prison and remains on the sex offender registry for life, which, by the way, is not public in the UK. He has lived in France ever since. Emma's story sits inside a larger reckoning in British sport. So you remember in 2020, Gymnasts for Change, with heroes like Jenny Pinches and the Downey sisters, Olympians like that, being behind the push, and they helped force national attention on the abusive system. The pressure from Gymnasts for Change ultimately triggered the Whyte Review, the independent investigation into British gymnastics. The review confirmed widespread mistreatment, failures to act, and a culture of protecting reputations over athletes. Sound familiar? In response, British Gymnastics created a restorative program for survivors and launched Reform 25, which was a commitment to change and to carry out what the Whyte Review asked for. But as Emma details in her book, the early offer to survivors was roughly £1,500, split amongst all of them affected, along with a small number of therapy sessions, like 5 to 7. And in my opinion, that's incredibly dangerous and an insulting proposition. Here's like £150 each and just enough therapy sessions to send you into a spiral when the sessions run out. Totally safe. Emma's work documents not only what happened at Olga, but how the system allowed it to continue for decades, and that there is, in fact, though, a light at the end of the tunnel. Here's Emma. Can you tell the story of how we first met?
I reached out to you because I'd seen the Hall of Shame episode and mention of Monica Phelps and watched, and my jaw was on the floor. And I was talking to the screen like, yes, you're onto something, but this is just like, you'd opened the door, but you hadn't seen what's inside.
I want to tell people that we're not going to go into depth and into details about what happened, but I do think it's so important for people to understand. You talk so much about like the psychological damage that it does to your relationships. Yeah. But you had an experience where you went to a doctor and you were examined. And the doctor said something to you that when people ask me, well, what happened to them? Like what did Brian Phelps do? What did the brother do? Like what actually happened? Yeah. I tell this story. Can you explain what happened?
It would probably be easier to say what didn't they do? Yeah, it was an MRI scan that you're talking about, and they came and spoke to me when I'd been really ill, had a lot of surgery, and he said to me, did you conceive your son naturally? Is he yours, or is he a surrogate, or this kind of thing? And I said, well, bizarrely, I did, having been told I never would be able to have children. And he said, your uterus has been split in two. You must have carried a child in half of your womb. And he was very, very tiny when he was born. Yeah. So that was one thing. And I didn't go there. I just said, oh, I never would say to someone I don't know. And And there was another time I had a water skiing accident and I was examined, and similar comments were made. I never say anything. And I've had, I've been ill since I'm very unwell now. I have a lot of health issues, unsurprisingly. And in hospital in London, just one consultant I did disclose to, and because it was significant to the diagnosis that I was being given. And she was very good, and we had a lot of conversation. That was quite recently. That was probably 2024, April 24, something like that. So I do start to talk about it a little bit more now, but up until 2021 and starting therapy, no, I don't go there.
I think it describes, you don't need to say anything else when you hear that you were damaged internally so badly starting at age 5 that that is what a doctor said after an MRI.
Yeah. And when he was questioned by the police in 2008 about this, there's a policeman's actually written, it was a piece that I found in a newspaper article, and the policeman, senior policeman, could not believe what he was hearing from Brian, because Brian was saying, "Oh, for God's sake, they need to go over it. This was years ago. It's irrelevant, That was his take. We don't need to go there. That wasn't, that was then." Yep. And then, do you know what his next sentence was? "But do you know how many champions I've coached?"
Because he effectively admitted it in the interviews.
Yeah. That's how did he not? This is what people say, why aren't you going to the police? Why aren't you going to court? Because every single time they have that man, if the 3 that actually took him to court, there were 5 involved, the 3 that actually took him to court, if they could not make that those rape charges stick, what the hell chance does anybody else have in this county of getting this man justice in what people think is the traditional sense over here?
Just to be clear here, he was convicted of sexual assault, but he was never convicted of the rapes.
And what does it take from us to try and then fail? No, of course we're not going to do that. Not that route anyway. Always find another way. There's always another way. And people have said, wouldn't you like to see him in jail? I quite like the thought of him being frightened every night on his own in that place in France now. Because Monica put their address all over the internet.
And all the neighbours know.
Or their neighbours definitely know, because quite a lot of copies of Historic got sent to that village.
That's shocking. How did that happen?
I don't know.
I love that.
They must have fallen off a lorry.
Breaking in here for a little update. We have a live show, the live show you have been waiting for since Paris, coming up, actually before Paris, I think is when we tried to put this together, on December 14th. So look for tickets imminently. If you're not on the newsletter list, now is a good time to do that. And if you're looking for holiday goodies, our merch is on sale right now. Stock up for college season. Get all of your stuff in the merch store. Everything is linked in the show notes.
Club Gym Nerd, you get discounts and first dibs on live show tickets, an extra whole podcast every week, athlete dossiers for major competitions, code guides, options to commission your own segments. It also makes a great gift. Check it out at gymcastic.com at the Join the Club tab.
So tell me, why did you write this book?
Oh, why did I write it? Well, to be honest, it was Olga was expanding around us. Olga kept going. They'd fled long ago. Brian had been jailed. Olga was still here, which was terribly triggering for so many of us. We couldn't understand why it would still be here. So we asked the council, because they were, again, complicit, just as Monica was, and we couldn't get any straight answers to who actually owned it at that time. So there was therefore no one for us to go to say, can you please stop expanding? It's bad enough it's here in 2 locations. I mean, there were loads of locations that are hard for us anyway. The original Olga in Lagland Street in Poole, and then a couple of miles down the road, there's the Olga at the site at Ashley Road, which was the bulk of the horror stories. Then they moved to a place called Rossmore Sports Centre, so that's site number 3. Then they went to another sports centre with a satellite Olga. Plus, there were other places and in lots of schools and diving clubs. So this area of our county of Dorset is littered with places where the triggers are everywhere. So they then announced that they were going to open a satellite Olga, and we thought, my God, where is this going to stop? And I think that was by then there were only 12 of us that knew of each other from a survivor point of view. We knew we knew there would be more, but we were the ones that were still around here. I'd been away but come back. And then the pandemic hit. So just as we were kind of getting some traction on, right, we need to get this stopped, and who does own this brand? Then next minute it was 2020. So the clubs were all shut down. And so things kind of went on hold. And then things were very, very difficult for me in the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic 2021. I was very unwell with my mental health and struggling. And then January 2022, this was the real deal breaker, the discovery of the Phelps Legacy Club right under the noses of survivors, with criminal links involved, evidence of Monica Phelps having been inside when it was at a previous location and involved still here at this club. And then other survivors were just like, they'd been running club Olympic themed floats through the streets and things, and we looked online and it was all there, everything, because they did at that time put they were never off social media. So these Olympic themed floats, I mean, it was sick
to catch people up with. So Olga is a very famous club that started in the 70s, a gymnastics club.
Mid 70s,
started by Monica Phelps and Brian Phelps, and then Brian Phelps' brother who's also a convicted pedophile as well.
Yeah, he got convicted because Brian got convicted, and then people started phoning in survivors, lots of them, and then they realised they were talking about 2 different brothers,
And so this second club then you found, and they were active in this club after Brian had been a convicted sex offender, and this club is
Monica
open.
and Brian, it was so we're talking about January 2022. So at that stage, Brian and Monica had fled to France because they were threatened if they didn't, then everything was going to be exposed. That was right back in 2003/2004 time when I actually disclosed in 1993. So many of us have been coming forwards over the years. So, with very, very similar versions of the same story, really. But this club was so chilling. It literally was. Well, it's in the book. You probably read it. My son's school bus route got changed. So this was a new bus stop on a first day of term somewhere I hadn't been for a while. And as far as I knew, that building was a martial arts club. And my son thankfully had got on the bus and that had pulled away, and I just glanced up and it was so triggering. The writing on the building, the sign of British Gymnastics on the fence there, and then a sign on the door saying birthday party under the gym. She's got a room there that she's also converted. And now for those, obviously your audience won't know, but we were abused in a basement, some of us. We were abused all over the place, but abused in a basement underneath a birthday party basement, Disney themed birthday party basement at the Ashley Road site, the second Olga site to be built. And this was when the Whyte review was going on, I'm sat there, obviously very triggered, nose bleeding, not dealing with things well at all. And it just, why did I write the book? Because that moment was enough. I literally screamed enough. And I think I've said this before, I always thought one day someone would do something about what happened to us all. And I think that morning, I just realised it was going to be me. So I spoke to the others and we all just said, right, it's got to stop. And I think the bottom line is all of us who survived this story would never forgive ourselves if we didn't speak out and another child or children experience what we were subjected to. And because we've got, such more safeguarding and no mandatory report, things are not good in Britain on child safety at all. So there was a very, very real chance, it felt, that children were at risk. So we wrote to the Whyte Review and they agreed and said this needs to be looked into urgently. And then, the pass the potato game began, and then everyone involved trying to help us, which was the media, British Athletes Commission, saw the nightmare that we have here trying to report anything.
And so what happened with that club, which we have the same thing here. We have rapists who's they have, before they were going to get banned, they then sold the club to their kids and family, and they run the clubs now. So what happened to that legacy Olga club run by the family of the convicted pedophile?
Well, I'm not allowed to swear, so I won't say F all, but F all.
Is it still there?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. And what's more, when the scenario was from the Whyte Review, brilliant response from the Whyte Review, excellent, professional, near immediate, safeguarding, blah, blah, blah. This must be looked into. Even they said, even without your permission, we have to report this, but we'd rather do it with you and support you through it. So that was the kind of communication. I agreed immediately. British Athletes Commission had set up a team to support people reporting to the Whyte Review. They offered me, would it be better if there was just one nominated person who I could work with? I have to say, she's never left my side. She's still here all these years later. They have been outstanding, truly outstanding. She's with British Athletes Commission, but when the Whyte Review commenced, they pulled in a support team from NSPCC, actually, I believe, and they were working with people to give them support through the process of reporting. So to the Whyte Review, that was. So they then were allocated this story, and because there was a safeguarding concern, a serious one, they said, right, well, we will report. So I laughed when she told me that. Bless her, she's quite young, she's very experienced in what she does, but she was not experienced in sport, and she certainly wasn't experienced in the cult that I believe gymnastics to be. So I laughed, and she said, why are you laughing? And I said, who are you planning on reporting to? And she said, well, British Gymnastics and the ladder, which is the local authority designated officer. So I said, so can I just get this straight? This is the story that you've got in front of you, and you're telling me you're going to report it to British Gymnastics, who are currently under investigation in the Whyte Review, and the council completely involved, complicit in our story of everything that went wrong, because they employed all the Phelps repeatedly.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to mention in the story too, is that what's different about how the English system worked compared to like USA Gymnastics is that all of the pedophiles, many who are now dead, were not actually employees of USA Gymnastics or of like a city. They were independent, private club owners and coaches.
Yes.
But the Phelpses were actually employees of the city.
Yeah, so basically they were, it's different in different scenarios, but in our scenario, multiple times, Monica was a primary school teacher for a start. Brian was working in the council as a swimming instructor when they'd already banned him from one dive pool club called the Dolphin Pool. They banned him in the early 70s, I think it was. Could have been late 60s, early 70s, I think. Yeah, it was 70s. And the next minute in 2004, I believe, that late, after so many of us had come forward, and they kept saying nothing to see here, nothing to see here, insufficient evidence to proceed. I mean, I should have that on a fucking t-shirt. So, insufficient evidence to proceed. I mean, every female child born in this country should be given a t-shirt with that on, because that's what it's like here. So, yes, they were employed by the council. They were all three of them. They were employed, I think both of them by British Gymnastics. Certainly, Brian was employed by British Gymnastics, and given Master Gymnast and Master Coach awards by British Gymnastics. And other coaches have admitted they knew. Everyone knew what was happening to the Olga girls.
That's always what you find out. That so many people knew, or they had like a feeling, or they would never let their gymnasts or their kids go there because something was wrong, but no one ever reported it.
Yeah. Oh, entire families were groomed. I mean, the entire flipping community was groomed because of who they were. And they weren't just employed by the council and by British Gymnastics. They were employed. Brian was employed by the BBC for like a decade. He was presenting Grandstand, our Saturday sports show, while he was abusing me in '82 until I finally fled. So basically, and they were employed. And look at all their commentating work.
Right.
They were employed across the Eurosport, definitely, for a long time. And how Monica got away with what she did with them, I just don't know.
So what is the name of this club that's still open and owned by the family?
Renascence.
Oh, that's even grosser.
Yeah, okay, exactly. What does that word mean? Does it mean coming back? And did that gym open as Brian was released from jail? Yes, it did. Where did the funds come from to open that club, to purchase that building? No answers to any of this are available.
This is the truth with so many of these coaches in many sports, not just gymnastics.
Absolutely,
but the signs started when they were very young, and if they had been convicted and put in jail earlier, if the women and boys who came forward were believed, then all of this could have been prevented. And can you talk about how many times Brian had been arrested and investigated before you even met him?
Yeah, absolutely. This actually, when the jigsaw was complete, which took years to put every single piece together, this piece hurt the most, because this is the piece that undeniably showed us that this was all avoidable. None of us needed to have gone through this. So essentially, Brian was arrested in 1966. He was up in Sunderland there, which is Monica's stomping ground, for exposure in front of children in a public swimming pool in Dunstan swimming baths. Not in the pool. He was standing at the top of a flight of stairs, is what's reported in the media. Exposed himself to children, witnessed by child and children.
And they did it twice, right? It wasn't just one time. It was two girls on different occasions that came forward.
Yeah. When it got to court, it was in court between April and June. There was different report. The waters were muddy. They were not making this clear. I had to really go some to try and get a very clear timeline of how this happened. But undeniably, it happened. It happened repeatedly. And he was protected and completely let off so that he could go and compete in the Commonwealth Games in Jamaica in August of '66, where he won double gold, by the way. That was him having just been let off his first child sex crimes. He's there with the royal family putting on a special performance for them. Charles and Anne were children at that point still, and the Duke of Edinburgh, Queen wasn't there. So in court, the defence, it was a magistrate court, his defence lawyer said, if you convict this man, you're going to destroy his career. He's dedicated his life to diving. He was like 22 or something. And although it will not affect his marriage, he actually said that, it will ruin his career. So what had Monica said in response to this, that this defence attorney knew it wasn't going to... I mean, she was right, because, let's face it, it didn't affect her marriage at all. In fact, it went from strength to strength, didn't it? Because they were still together until she died recently.
When I think about this, like, you met him when you were 5 years old.
Yeah,
This is
just
when
started primary school, yeah.
this started, and it was almost 10 years before that
Yeah,
this arrest happened.
Yeah, correct.
And you would think that, I mean, what's crazy about this is you think, oh my God, in 1966, I can't believe a judge would say that. But these are almost the exact words that we hear from judges now. I think of the Stanford swimmer case. That's almost a direct quote, that 1966 quote from the judge, that the judge here in California said.
But the 1966 court case, the book is littered with similar examples. Not even long ago, it happens. Their opinions sway their decisions. None of it's right, but it happens all the time. There was one, I think I put it in the book, where a girl had been raped. I think she was maybe 10. This isn't sport. And the judge said to the perpetrator, well, go and buy her a bike or something to cheer her up. That was the justice. That's British courts for you. They're shameful. That's absolutely utterly shameful. And the only way we can have any leverage to try and change anything is to shame it globally, which is what we're trying to do, because they won't listen here. You get nowhere. And that's why we're in the mess we're currently in here, which is very, very serious indeed for women and girls.
One of the examples of what a mess this is, and I think you gave so many great examples, like you mentioned, of how women have been treated when they've come forward, is that after Brian, a convicted sex offender who's a registered sex offender in England, fled to France, where he still lives.
Oh, yeah.
He was honored in England for his work as a coach. Can you talk about that ceremony?
This, just to clarify, the ceremony that you're speaking of is the disgraced Nick Stuart Foundation. That's what you're talking about from a ceremony point of view. And just to get clearer on the timelines, Brian had not been convicted, and Brian wasn't convicted and jailed in Britain until 2008. He was brought back from France in 2008. However, in 2003, 2004, and all the years surrounding that, everyone knew that Brian was, very likely to be arrested. That so many of us had come forward by this point. So in 2003, this Nick Stuart annual dinner celebration began, which is usually run in September, created with former BG presidents, CEOs, safeguarders. It was Brian Stocks, Alan Somerville, Trevor Lowe, and a British Gymnastics banned for safeguarding coach now, Mike Swallow, who presides over all of it. British Gymnastics deny that they are anything to do with the Nick Stuart Foundation. Well, that's farcical. It was created in 2003. It's all of the old guard celebrating each other. That's what this is about. Coaches, how brilliant they all are. And some of them are, absolutely. So the inaugural year, 2003, they decided... And they have these diplomas of honour. It's all very British, diplomas of honour and all this kind of thing. So the first year it was given to none other than Monica Phelps. So she's there, sat there in this video. All these, they've uploaded them all. I mean, it's shocking that they've uploaded them all to YouTube. Alan Somerville's uploaded all of them. He sadly died in... I think September 2024. So I don't know if they can't get them down, but I don't think I'd be leaving stuff like this up there. These awards, this one in particular, there's Monica and Brian being brought to their feet and celebrated by people who can't have not known what was unfolding, because these were presidents, CEOs, senior safeguarding figures in British Gymnastics at the time. Brian was about to be banned from British Gymnastics. So they bring him to his feet and celebrate. And Brian Stock actually said he thanked Brian for introducing him to the sport, and they gave them all a big clap, and or the way they big each other up. How can they do that, knowing what was about to unfold? And then they gave Monica, who was very sheepish about the way she spoke about Brian in her speech. I'm not surprised, given what I know she knew at that time. So she was awarded this diploma of honour. Yeah, I think the whole thing was just absolutely shocking, given what they must have known. I mean, the rumours were rife. Coaches have come forward and said everyone knew. Even coaches from swimming have come forward and said that they knew.
And that's the thing. Like, of course, people in diving must have known for years and years and years. And you give a great example of that in the book. And I want to play a clip from that ceremony here.
There's been a lot of talk about the Whyte report, written by somebody who know nothing about sport or coaching. And I feel greatly sorry for all those clubs and the coaches that have put so much into our success in the last 5 to 10 years. And I don't believe what's been written has anything at all to do with what really happens in club gymnastics. So I'd like to say congratulations to all those coaches, all those people who've been involved, and it's a heartfelt congratulations for the success we've had.
Mike Swallow, by the way, is one of the very, very few banned people from British Gymnastics. There are only like 77 people on that list, and Mike Swallow, who just said that, is on the list.
There are some priceless ones. Trevor Lowe calling it the Whyte Review toxic to the sport.
And the Whyte Review, I feel like there's a law firm hired to look into and investigate British Gymnastics and their safeguarding practices. And I feel like you guys, and this is a credit to the Gymnasts for Change movement and all those athletes, including, active elites who came forward.
And male and female gymnasts, is not, the male gymnasts spoke out too. It's shocking. I don't know how British Gymnastics has survived it, to be honest.
We had a similar review here, and the Whyte Review, I think, was so much more damning and so much more complete. Like, the one here was kind of a slap on the wrist. The Whyte Review is like a sword stabbing through the heart of exposing everything that happened in British Gymnastics. And it's not perfect.
But when we have these reviews here, we've had another one into institutional child sex abuse called ICSA that cost £186 million and equally as damning. But the thing is, nothing changes. We still don't have a sports ombudsman. With ICSA, we still don't have any mandatory reporting. We still don't have the national redress scheme to compensate victims. No, that's been cancelled by Starmer. So nothing. What's the point in paying all these millions? But with the Whyte Review, something is different because Anne Whyte did an amazing job on the Whyte Review. That's undeniable. She must have been shocked to the core of what she was realising. However, she did, I do feel, and I would say this to her face, she played down the sexual abuse. It was minimised. It was buried. 30 more cases of sexual abuse have happened, and then it was full stop, move on. That's how it felt to me. When we know that if there's 30, that means only 1 in 4 maximum will come forward. So we know that's more than 100 straight away. I would argue that and I know for a fact, British Gymnastics does have a significant and ongoing problem with paedophilia and child sex predators coaching small children. And that's undeniable. So I do feel that's the only thing with the Whyte Review. I do think she dismissed the sexual abuse in a way that must have been awful for those 30 victims and all the rest as well that hadn't been able to come forward.
You have a child, and I wondered about, you discuss your parents in the book, and I find that I wanted to ask you, as a parent and both as a gymnast who has suffered these abuses, what you would tell other parents, coaches, teachers about what the signs are and how to protect their kids, because it's so frustrating having done, like, one of the reasons I started this show was like, hey, there's tons of abuse going on. People need to know about this. And yes, things are better than they were. But it is so frustrating, even knowing parents that have listened to this show for years and years that are like, yeah, I mean, this is bad, but it's not sexual abuse bad. And I'm like, yeah, but that's how it happens.
Yeah. And also, even if there is no sexual abuse, it stays with, here's a good example, actually. There are so many survivors of the Phelps. And we have a situation now where I talked to a good number of them, and some of them were not sexually abused by Brian at all. And yet they still have the legacy of the abuse that they survived, which was not sexual abuse. So they have all the other crap that we had thrown at us. They've all got, almost every single one of us has been left with either a very poor relationship with food or a full-on eating disorder. That's just like a given. Low self-esteem, inability to hold relationships. There's a list that goes across the board. And now on top of it, some of them have survivor guilt because they have been affected, but they look at kind of the more, well, it's all serious, but what I went through, and just feel like, well, I got off light, but they didn't get off light. It was horrific what many of them were subjected to. I feel like shaking parents sometimes.
Yes.
Do you feel like that?
Yes, like I feel like the culture is what creates the opportunity for abuse, so the kids don't say anything. This is how it starts.
Absolutely. And it's because it's the virtue of sport. This is how these predators get away with it. And I really address it a lot in the book in various chapters, I think. Yes, sport is good for children. Yes, and exercise is good for children. We all know that. However, it's also not necessarily safe for children in the way it's currently being in some countries, certainly this country, in the way it's being delivered. I would say to parents, do not leave your kids there and walk out and go and have, an hour on your phone in the car for a break. God, I understand why they would want to. I do, but it's not school. There's no statutory regulation in place here. So, and parents don't want to, they'd rather not know that because they're safe in their little assumption that I'm putting them in there, that's ticking the exercise box, and they do seem to enjoy it, and then I can just, go and do something else for that hour. No. You need to know exactly who's inside that club. You need to have done due diligence on every single member of staff, including directors and people who aren't actually maybe coaching. Look at the story that we have and who was behind. When I found out who was behind this legacy club, and he was a convicted arsonist and burnt an army major's house down, that's just a normal little club in a village in Dorset. How can this be allowed to happen? So no parents would know that, I think. So you have to do your due diligence, and you have to, ours was a very parents out club, and a lot of clubs were for a long time. And then post Whyte review, that's been outlawed to an extent. But if the clubs aren't big enough and they say, we can't fit parents in and we can't, then they can still be closed clubs. So that's even more concerning. And I think, you have to have, it comes down to your relationship with your child, I think. Communication. I think you do have to have the conversations with them that we never had. It's not always safe in sport, and they need to know. But the slightest thing, it could be that they don't want to go back. It could be that they are not sleeping the night before they go, or not eating, very likely. It could be anything, and it's not necessarily sexual abuse. There could be, still fat shaming, weight shaming, all of that could still be happening. You need to be there. You need eyes on. If you're going to go down that route with your child, then you need to be there.
Can you describe the difference between, with an example maybe, about how male victims of sexual abuse have been treated versus female victims in British gymnastics or British sport.
Yeah, this is significant because it happened again. This was another stone uncovered, and it hurt particularly because it was the same time. It was all around the 2000. You know, when Brian was being investigated, it was happening around the same time, and it became apparent that a predatory coach had been sexually abusing boys inside British Gymnastics, which absolutely does happen, obviously. And when I read the report about this, well, by the time I read it, convicted paedophile, there was a story that British Gymnastics had paid for a private investigator when they heard that boys were being abused to trawl Friends Reunited. Do you have that over there? It was Friends Reunited was a site where like old school friends could put in their alma mater and find old classmates and stuff like that. Trawled Reunited found as many gymnasts from that club as he possibly could, and went and asked them had they been abused. And a number had, and conviction happened. Why can they do that for the male gymnasts, and yet at the same time, not one of us who knows of each other now and are in touch was contacted about and asked whether Brian Phelps had ever done, or Monica, or John, any of them. Well, John wasn't British Gymnastics, but none of us were asked if we'd been abused or contacted. And I can tell you why they didn't, because I think they knew what the answer was going to be. It probably would have been easier to find them girls that weren't. And interestingly, Brian said in one of his press releases after his arrest in 2008 that he said thousands and thousands of girls have passed through my hands. That was what he said. He said more gross things than that as well. And then when I spoke out in 2023 on the BBC and the Guardian newspaper, Brian and Monica were furious, and Brian said, "This is absolutely untrue, absolutely untrue." And he said, when I was arrested in 2008, the police trawled the internet looking for other potential victims. Well, I don't know where they looked, but not one of us was contacted. Not one. And we'd have all probably said yes. So yeah, that hurt when we discovered that, different. But it's not surprising, really, for Britain, to be honest.
You mentioned in your book that there's no mandatory reporting requirement in England, and I wondered, can you explain? Like, I assume there is a mandatory reporting requirement for anyone that's in the medical field and teachers, anyone that has contact with children. Can you explain what you want?
Britain won't pass a mandatory reporting bill. So there is no mandate to report known or suspected child sexual abuse. Now, within certain jobs there might be, and within certain positions there might be, but they won't bring in a law here. So if a person saw a child being sexually abused, there is no crime whatsoever in them going the other way and just ignoring it.
So just the general public, you walk by, you see something, you don't have any obligation to report that crime.
No, not at all. So if you stop at a car crash, if you don't stop at a car crash, that's a crime. And there's no mandate to report known or suspected child sex abuse in Britain. And we are one of the only developed countries that refuses to bring it in. And the ICSO inquiry that I spoke about earlier have tried to get mandatory reporting across the line, and they have designed a kind of half-hearted one. Tom Perry from a company called Mandate Now, who's actually retired now, Tom put a very good quote in the book for me around what's been going on in this country and why the establishment do not want a mandate to report known or suspected child sexual abuse in Britain. It's disgusting. And it speaks volumes for what Britain is. But it's shocking in 2025 that Britain does not have mandatory reporting law, a safe, robust and effective mandatory report. They brought one in for their money, though, I did notice. They did manage to bring in mandatory reporting to keep their money safe.
I love the comparisons you make. They
Just
made me laugh
can't
out loud
quite do it for children.
so many times when you compared how good the British system is with protecting money. And they basically invented all of the corporate structures to protect money, but have none of that for protecting children against sexual abuse. It's one of the things that I laughed at.
Volumes for what Britain is, doesn't it? And it is it's farcical. The sad part is it's true. But, you know, unless we start exposing this, nothing is going to change.
Yeah.
I know I can't change it all, but at least I can start the ball rolling and, you know, people can be asked more questions and is this really true? And you'll be told probably, oh, well, it's not quite like that. That's not quite how it is. And we are trying to work on a mandatory reporting law. Well, Tom Perry at Mandate Now is probably in his 70s now. It's been his life's work. You know, if Tom can't get it across the line, I don't think we stand a hope in hell's chance, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, when you still have a prime minister who made a joke about what a waste of time and made a sexual joke about the waste of time it was to investigate childhood sexual abuse, then
Boris Johnson spaffing money. Don't be spaffing money up a wall. Shocking. Yeah. His classmates were being sexually abused in his school.
Of course they were. The English boarding school system?
Yes.
That's like where it was founded. They invented sexual abuse.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. They did.
There is a list of banned coaches for British Gymnastics, but there isn't. It's not for all sports, and it's still managed by British Gymnastics. What would you like to see instead?
We need an independent professional, and we need a national list of banned coaches, and it needs to be run by somebody who has nothing to do with sport whatsoever. And we need an independent ombudsman. And we need statutory regulation of childhood sport. And eventually, one day, maybe we will get there. But if we could get the database of, you know, banned coaches and independently, we have to get this stuff away from sport. They've shown themselves not to be safe to preside over this. I mean, even the BG banned list, there's loads of coaches whose names aren't on there. Loads of them. And none of the coaches who are dead are named on there.
Yeah, I was shocked at all the names that were missing on that list.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of names missing. And anyway, people here just change. You know, our criminals here. I know I do say this in the book, but until very recently, it may just have gone through Parliament now, but maybe it hasn't. It's still perfectly legal here now for child sex offenders who've been convicted to come out of jail and just change their name. They're supposed to let their probation officers know. They don't. And then they disappear. So we had, there's at least 750 child sex predators just went missing because they can just change their name. And the other thing that they can do is if they don't fancy being on the child sex offender register anymore, if it's, you know, hampering them in any way, they can just ask after X number of years, it's either 10 or 12, to come off it. And the majority of the time they say yes. And they don't even tell their victims that they're not on the child sex predator list anymore. Sex offender list, register.
How many survivors have come forward to you since writing the book?
Another 4 since, and that was recently in the last week and a half.
How many do you know of already?
30.
And those are just the ones who have come forward, which is so hard to do.
Yes.
So probably times 10 that minimum.
At least. Yeah.
And then there's the people that have to realize that what happened to them was wrong. Which,
yes. That's happened too. I have had those conversations.
I love how you describe that in the book, because we've literally had people listen to the podcast and write in and say, I didn't realize that I was abused until I listened to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And what does that tell you? I mean, heartbreaking, hey? I mean, I didn't either. I as a child, that's how I think I put it in the book. I didn't know it was abuse. I didn't even, to be honest, mid-70s, 80s, we didn't talk about abuse. I don't ever remember the word abuse being discussed in our peer groups or anything like that. don't remember it being a thing. It was just, be a good girl, trust and obey.
That your school had trust and obey on the
Oh
wall
my
is
goodness. Yeah, trust and obey, no other way. Yeah. And it was funny that I thought and obey was a person. You see that, but I put it in the book because I wanted the readers to realise how little I was when this began. I didn't even know what a hymn was until one fell from the ceiling and we were suddenly supposed to know the words. You just accepted then. I think it would be different now. I hope it would be, but. And I think obviously some of it is how you're being raised as well, and whether you have a voice or whether you don't. But yeah, of course I accepted just everything, and I do remember thinking, oh well, this is unfortunate because I was having a very nice little life, thank you very much. And then school wasn't too bad, but it was very strict, which is why I think I was enjoying my sport aspect of it so much, because that was where I could just be. So I probably was a bit naughty. I did a few things that probably led me to Olga, which is unfortunate. But just being a kid, I think I was just being a kid.
I think it's all the things you describe, but someone might call naughty, are being a kid who knows herself and knows that the adults are being stupid and better. They're just not listening to you. That's how I related to it. I was
that is really what it was. It is. If you put a load of ropes out for a load of kids, if you don't say to them, don't go up them, or don't go to the top, or if you go to the top, please come down. You just have to be clear with kids. They just need instructions. She did then tell me to come down, or ask me to, and I think I probably stayed up there a little longer. And they did become the ropes that hung me. But, it's me that has to live with that consequence. So
I love that you talk about this is also the part of you that saved you. This is the part of you that was like, yeah, I'm awesome and I can do this and I know this is good for me, and you're being stupid and I'm safe, and actually you should embrace this part of me that it's athletic and courageous. And this is a part of that's a good thing about being a girl. And that is the thing that got you the courage to, against your parents' will, you are the one that went into the club and said, fuck you, I'm never coming back here. You didn't say that when you were 13, but
no, I
those
didn't,
are my
but,
words.
The determinant, the fire in my bed, I had reached my no. I'd found my no. And that was it was a heartbreakingly difficult experience to go through. That I was made to go through that and do that myself, to face him. I never, ever will forget it. I'll never get over that. But I can tell you now, that is the night I went from being a victim to a survivor. And I didn't ever go back up until 2022 when I went back and the club was gone. That was hugely significant. But 8 years too late, sadly. But better then than not walking out at all.
I mean, you saved yourself. You became you became the hero you needed. And
yeah.
In the book, you talk about kind of your parents' perspective on this, and I feel like so many parents feel so guilty, and some parents, honestly, it's led them to lose their lives over the guilt that they felt.
I know. I'm very aware of that playing out in the USA of one particular survivor. That hasn't happened in my story.
Have you had that conversation with your parents? Just, do they know, and have you talked about it?
They do know. They've known since 1993 in the eating disorder unit. I didn't share the details of what unfolded in the book. It didn't go well. And that broke my heart. And made me need to be in the eating disorder unit for a lot longer than I perhaps could have been.
Do you have a relationship with them now? If they're still...
I do. It's never discussed.
Yeah. I think you're not alone in that experience.
Yeah.
I love your description of PTSD and how you did not realize you had it. I related to this so well because I remember when someone told me I had PTSD and I was like, I'm not a soldier. And you said that exact thing. I thought only people in war could have PTSD.
Yeah.
It was so relatable.
Well, it wasn't until men started getting it that we were allowed to have a label for it, you know? I'm not, by the way, dismissing what they went through, and horror stories, but yeah, not everyone with PTSD is a soldier. No.
Did that unlock something in your brain when there was a label and a explanation?
In January 2021, I contacted a therapist because I was in trouble, but I was really sinking fast. And I contacted her. We do laugh about this now. And she said, well, it's a minimum of 6 weeks. And I remember saying to her, well, that seems a bit excessive. We're at 5 years now. So it shows. I honestly think I thought I could just go and do a couple of sessions. That's how naive and unaware of the impact of my trauma on me that I was. And obviously I never went to her about this story. I went to her because multiple things had happened in my life. I'd lost 3 members of my family to COVID in the space of a week. Whilst just seeing her, I think that happened. Things were unraveling very quickly. And I think we'd been working together we were working it was COVID. So I was in my car by the river because it was the only place I could obviously have privacy to talk to her. And nothing about this was disclosed. None of I never intended to talk to her about Olga or the Phelps or any of that. But she could see how unwell I was, and I was very, very unwell then in 21. And we had come to the end of the 6 weeks, and there was this realization that this needed to continue, the sessions. And she said to me, but I'm not happy for you to be in the car. You have to come in person now because I have concerns that this isn't safe anymore. Which was a bit of a shocker and a sucker punch, and I didn't want to go because that felt a bit more like letting somebody a bit closer. And then the walls pretty quickly came tumbling down, I think, after that. And she just said one day, because I was, I think, dissociating so much, I think. Of course, I don't remember because I was so dissociated, but we have had conversations, and I think she said, yeah, I think you have PTSD. And then I started looking at it and looking it up and thinking, God, she's right. I do have that. And then, it became rapidly apparent that I had complex post-traumatic stress disorder, unsurprisingly. And that's when I found the CPTSD Foundation in America, actually, who I work with a lot and who are absolutely amazing for wraparound support around my therapy sessions and things. Brilliant. Athena Moberg, amazing woman. Yeah.
I'm so glad you found that, and I found it so relatable and easy for, I think, people who have never been through this. I think they also could relate to this, like sudden, but that can't be me. But here are the symptoms. Oh wait, these match. I just thought you did a really good job of explaining that, and I remember how my PTSD is from something else, but it's not the same as yours. But I remember my husband, fact checker here, had to say to me, like, if you had diabetes, you would take medication for it, right? You would do the therapy necessary for this, right? And I was just like, well, yeah, but this isn't the same. It's like my brain, that's not the same. Like it was so hard to wrap my head around what I thought. But trauma is trauma.
Oh, absolutely. And I think once you accept that, I'm not going to say life gets easier straight away, because certainly in the trauma background, then obviously the floodgates open, and the whole, I think, chapter 11 of the book, I discussed this quite a lot. I think chapter 11, or might be chapter 12, perhaps. You have to be very you have to consciously want to process your, or not necessarily want to, but you have to accept that you won't reach management of your condition without really processing your trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, and I do explain quite a bit about how that looked for me in the book, and it was messy. You know, it's been a very, very messy few years where a real, I think I liken it to being on one of those river rapid boats, you know. You just hold on for dear life and hope to God your therapist knows how to steer it. And thankfully for me, she did.
You know, when you have a good therapist, when they don't say to you first thing, you have had blah, 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 and it instantly terrifies you and you want to run out of there screaming. You describe a relationship with like that builds, and like obviously they know that there's something deeper.
Yeah.
They've done this, like they can probably tell the minute you walk in, and you finally get there and you trust them. And then I love how you describe also that like you can feel better. You won't feel like this forever. There is another side of this, and the 7 years new body.
Really, you know, that, and that's what I wanted the book to deliver, because I don't want it to be, yes, I want it to be a massive warning to parents. Of course I do. But I also want it to be something a survivor can pick up and think, because I did it, you know. Gwen Vanderpad did a fantastic documentary on Discovery Plus called Groomed, about her abuse in swimming. And I watched that, and years ago now, quite a few years ago, and Gwen and I are friends now. And it was seeing her story, and I contacted her and said, because of you, I can do this. I feel I can do this. And I think that being a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, whether it's in sport or wherever, is incredibly lonely journey, can be, and painful and frightening and isolating. It's all of those things. And if that book helps one survivor feel less alone and more like, maybe, you know, she's done it, maybe I could too, then that's fantastic for me. And it's also helped obviously the Olga survivors as well. And it hasn't been just me. We have worked on it together.
What are some of the positives that you've experienced? Some hope through any examples that you can give, either systemic change or for you personally, or as the whole, the group of you?
Goodness me. I mean, there are so many. There really are. And I'm not just saying that. It's as hard as it's been. I'm so pleased it's not a secret anymore. All of us are, I think. I think finding community is huge to survivors. It's led to me working with and training and supporting many adult survivors of child sex abuse, not just in sport. They are the most beautiful people in the world, an amazing a group that not one of us would ever choose to belong to, obviously. Not one of us can ever not belong to it. But so I think that's been something I view as precious that's happened in the last 4 years or so. Particularly with the Olga survivors, being able to validate each other's experiences and the way we were treated, silenced, dismissed, gaslit, has been great. And when Monica and her old guard cronies from British Gymnastics really set on me for daring to speak out, and it was shocking, some of the things that were thrown, calling us liars. That's probably the least thing that was, you know, this is the best one. They're just after money. Okay, well, where are we going to get that from then? Because we're not asking for money from anywhere. Anything that the book makes is going to be put back into supporting survivors of child sex abuse. So that was, but I don't think the old guard really wanted to know. I think they knew it was true. But, you know, so there was a lot of whistleblowing comes with some fairly, you know, you pay a bit of a price, but I've used a pen name. I've done what I can to try and protect myself as much as I can. Would I have it any other way? No, never. I have not a single regret about doing this book. Really don't. So yeah, there's loads of positives really. It's been hard processing the trauma, really hard. Am I pleased I did it? Absolutely. Yeah. Really, really am. If you'd asked me, not every single day do I think like that. Some days it's harder than others. Nights are bad, but I don't have the flashbacks the way I used to. Yes, they still come sometimes, but I've learned how to manage them now. It becomes something you live alongside rather than it consuming you. So that's been really positive. Massive changes. And the nightmares are better. Nightmares are definitely better than they were. So if anyone's on the fence about whether or not to speak or get help, I would say a resounding, providing you do your homework and you find the right person, just find somebody, and please don't try and handle it on your own, because really you won't be able to. It's too hard. And you shouldn't have to.
What does justice look like?
For me, honestly, justice is a feeling. I think what we've done with Historic is the ultimate social justice story, because we've had Olga rebranded. Our shame has been redirected back to where the people that it always belonged to. We've corrected their legacy. We've done everything that we've achieved been done without a lawyer in sight. And for me, it's probably going to bed at night knowing I'm doing everything I feasibly can to protect kids in sport now. That feels a bit like justice as well. You're never going to get justice for such a horrific crime, really. What would be justice for that? You completely altered somebody's life. I can't imagine anything that would, he deserves the very, 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 very worst. Well, in this life, I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think he's suffered by what we've done. And now he hasn't got his complicit buffer by his side because she died in December. So I hope he's sat over there, reflecting on what his true legacy is, because he's just a gross paedophile. Nothing more than that.
Is there anything else that you want to talk about or you want people to know that we haven't covered?
The book's on Amazon.
Buy the book.
Yeah, buy the book. Read the book. It's hard read, it's a big book because, well, the referencing section alone is pretty big, because I felt I had to back up every single thing that I said, because when you've been
That's one of the great things about the book, though. I love that there was a reference and a study to back up. There's science to back up the things. There's the stories. The reference section is one of the best parts about the book. And honestly, I didn't think it was that hard of a read. I feel like it's hard. It was hard for me because of my PTSD and but I could make it through it. I just had to take some breaks and skip certain parts.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I would say that to anyone, and definitely to survivors. I mean, it is a book to pick up and put down for a while. Perhaps it's because it's a fairly heartbreaking story, but I do think it has a happy end. It could have ended very differently than it does. And I do think that's why I called the epilogue Full Circle, because it does feel like I've gone full circle with it now. And I just want to get on with the rest of my life now. But, I have made amazing connections along the way with the most incredible people, not just survivors, but people who are, allies too, who are some of the most beautiful people I've ever met in my life. So the people that I have in my life because of, what happened, well, that's not a bad thing, I think. Yeah. Gratitude, I feel, really, now that it's done and we've managed to get the story out there in a way that will hopefully have parents just question, why am I putting my child into this? Is it for me or is it for them? Who's the priority here? Yeah, I just want parents to think twice, because once it's your child, your daughter, there's no undoing it. You can't go back once this has happened, obviously. So just wise up.
I'm so glad you wrote this book, and I'm so glad that you have the community that you have around you. And I just want to thank you for all the work that you put into this.
You are so welcome. And thank you so much for all you do as well for the sport. Amazing effort.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Thank you so much for being here today.
You're so welcome.
Thank you so much to Emma, and please check out her book, Historic: The True Legacy of Childhood Sport, the book every parent needs to read. We'll see you next week with a commission on those extremely entertaining international team championships from the 90s. It's going to be a good one. See you guys then. Thanks for listening.